Blog Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit neye AMANSEM da dinde ujirafo kwesi radne mpata Akan Akwamumain Amaruka etifi mu ujirafo ujiramain mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, Black people. Today is AMANSEM Day, Affairs of the Nation Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ra Nehempata Akan, Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America, within Ojiramai, the purified nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. We have opened up the chat room. If you have any questions or comments and you'd like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. For those who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akanfo, Nanasom, Ancient Authentic, Akan, Ancestral Religion on Joda on Monday nights, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion. First and foremost, because we are Akan. Secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan ancestral religion, culture, cosmology, ritual practice, not only from individuals in the Western Hemisphere, but also from individuals on the continent of Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, who have been infected with fake religion, pseudo-religion, fictional cartoon characters who never existed, including Jesus, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Muhammad, Buddha, Brahman, Yahweh, Allah, and so forth. These fictional characters who never existed of any form or of any race whatsoever. When we become infected with pseudo-religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hebrewism, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and white culture in general, the presentation of ancestral culture becomes infected as well. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, which takes us to our origins in ancient Kanat, the Kan land, which is the title of ancient Nubia, our origins 2,000 years ago after the fall of Kamit and Kanat, Egypt and northern Nubia. Some of our people migrated from Kanat, the Kan land, to the western part of the continent and reestablished the Kanat Empire, the Nubian Empire, the Empire of Ghana. Hundreds of years subsequent to that, some of our people migrated further south because of Muslim invasions and reestablished Akanat civilization in the savanna and forest belt regions of today's contemporary Cote d'Ivoire and the Republic of Ghana. Hundreds of years subsequent to that, some of our people were taken from those regions and forced into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessier, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. This is how Akan people ended up in the Western Hemisphere. However, we maintained our ancestral religious practices. The Akan ancestral religion is called Winti in Suriname, in South America, from the Akan term Winti. Akan ancestral religion is called Obia in Jamaica, from the Akan term Obayi. Akan ancestral religion is called Hoodoo in North America, in the United States, from the Akan term Undu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, plant life. Undu also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. You find these same terms, Undu meaning medicine from fruit, plant life, trees, and so forth, and also to become heavy with the spirit in the language of ancient Kamit and Kamit in the hieroglyphs in the Medusa. We've shown that in our book, Hoodoo People. The title of ancient Kanat Nubia, one of the titles is also the Undu land, and the people called the Undu people. The offerings given on the shrines in the language of ancient Kanat and Kanat is also Undu, the sacred ritual offerings, the hoodoo we give to the spirits, the deities, and the ancestral spirits. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion on Joda Monday nights. Tuesday nights, Abenada, we have Ojira, which means purification. We deal with ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but wherever Afuraitkaini people exist in the world, on the continent, as well as in the Western Hemisphere. Ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives, so this is what we deal with on the Ojira broadcast. Ancestral religion, in essence, is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We state that Ojira purification operationalizes Nanason. Purification operationalizes our ritual practice of incorporating law and restoring balance. Our ancestral culture, our way of life, is to execute our divine function in creation, and in the process aligning every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. That is our culture's Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. The divine acceptance, the law, the love of divine order, and the divine rejection, the hate of disorder and its purveyors. We accept that which we need to harmonize with order. We reject that which we need to reject in order to restore balance and realign ourselves with order. When we make legitimate mistakes in life, then we engage the ritual process to ritually incorporate law and ritually restore balance so that we can get back on track with aligning every thought, every intention, and every action, every moment of every day with divine order, so we can execute our function in creation properly and defend and protect ourselves at the same time. This is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. So on the Ojira broadcast, Ojira means purification. We purify concepts, purify culture, cosmology, ritual practice, the knowledge of the culture, and so forth. We deal with our ancestral religious practice that we preserved in our blood circles, our spirit genetic blood circles, that we have transmitted intergenerationally and transcarnationally through successive reincarnations wherever we exist in the world, including the Western Hemisphere, because we maintained our ancestral religious practices such as Hoodoo, which is Akan ancestral religion in North America, Juju, which is Yoruba ancestral religion in North America, Voodoo, which is Ebe and Fon ancestral religion in North America, Wanga, which is Ovambo ancestral religion in North America, and Gengan, which is Fang ancestral religion in North America, these various expressions and others, because we maintained our ancestral religious practices for hundreds of years here in the Western Hemisphere. We were empowered and guided by the deities and the ancestral spirits of our direct blood circles on the best means by which to wage war against the whites and their offspring, massacre them, and taking up metal armaments, as well as utilizing chemical and biological warfare, root work being the precedent established for chemical and biological warfare in the Western Hemisphere. Because we engage these practices, then we wage war against the whites and their offspring incessantly and force the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. So this is what we deal with on Ojira, the purification broadcast. On Awukuda Akwada Wednesday night, we have Egwa, which is Marketplace, where we showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who maintain their ancestral religious values in the context of their service to the community, their positive impact on the community. We showcase those businesses, organizations, and institutions as part of our Okom economic development model operation. That is a publication that we have published, that we have released online, of course, for free, as all of the ebook versions of our publications are, our 30 books, as well as our 100-plus articles. This particular article dealing with economic development from an ancestral religious values foundation, a holistic approach to economic development. Part of that process is Starve the Beast and Feed the Pride, where we make an assessment on what funds we would have wasted potentially with the whites and their offspring on a weekly basis, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We reallocate those funds away from the white businesses and direct them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. So this is what we deal with on the Egwa Marketplace show on Wednesday night, Awukuda. Tonight is Yauda. Thursday, also called Yada and Abada. Thursday night, we have AMANSEM, Affairs of the Nation. Affairs of the Nation, specifically dealing with the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Oman, the nation, specifically Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. We deal with AMANNE, nationism, which is the purification of nationalism. A proper understanding of what a nation is, rooted in our ancestral religious values. We understand that an AMANNE, a nation, is a living, breathing entity governed by specific forces in creation. We as cells within that organ structure are component parts of that living, breathing entity. We interact with one another as cells interdependently, but at the same time we are supporting the function of that greater organ, that living entity that we are a component part of. And the deities, the AMANSEM, the Orishas, the Vodou that govern that organal structure. So when we have a proper understanding of what an AMANNE is, a nation is, then we make decisions based on that proper understanding. We're dealing with nationism, the purification of nationalism. We recognize that although we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, a forced migration into the Western Hemisphere, at some point, our Nananom Nsamanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, directed us to coalesce in a specific region of the Earth Mother's body here in the Western Hemisphere. We were directed to interface with the plant life, animal life, and mineral life in this region of the Earth Mother's body. Plant totems, animal totems, mineral totems, and so forth, for food as well as medicine, including their spiritual expressions and so forth. We interface with the unique expression of the Earth Mother divinities, Asase Afu and Asase Ya, as they manifest in this region of their body. We deal with the unique expression of the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the deities, as they manifest in this region of the Earth Mother's body. We're drawn together to blend ancestral blood circles in this region, to draw ancestresses and ancestors back through these blended ancestral blood circles as we operate in this region of the Earth Mother's body, taking on the unique expression of energy manifesting from this region, taking on the plant life, animal life, and mineral life as food as well as medicine into our bodies from this region, and our bodies generate a different frequency inclusive of all of our cells, inclusive of our reproductive cells. So when we have children, those bodies that are formed resonate at the frequency connected to this region of the Earth Mother's body, and therefore we have forged a locative identity, a unique expression of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture and ancestral religion and practice based on our unique interfacing with this region of the Earth Mother, as well as the forces in nature and our ancestresses and ancestors in blended blood circles in this region. So therefore we have a unique expression of our ancestral religious practices, a unique approach to solving our issues rooted in a proper knowledge of what an AMANNE, a nation, truly is. So we deal with issues that confront us, and we deal with them from a nationist perspective, an AMANNE perspective. We deal with Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit nationism, the purification of nationalism, a secular nationalism, nation building, quote-unquote nation building without a firm foundation of what a nation is, rooted in ancestral religious practices, rooted in our cosmology, everything that we create, every natural occurring entity, including a coalescing of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in a collective, as a functioning body, as an organal structure, is patterned after the order of creation. And deities govern naturally occurring entities, naturally produced entities. So we're coalescing together as a group, just like cells coalescing together to form an organ or a gland or some kind of tissue and so forth. They are governed by forces in creation. Then you understand what a nation and AMANNE actually is. And then you understand how to interface with one another as well as the organal structure of which you're a component part. If you don't have that proper understanding, you get your idea of nation building from the whites and their offspring. You try to blacken up white foolish notions of what nationalism is, secular nationalism, or nationalism rooted in Judeo-Christian Islamic nonsense. Then what we have is a failed approach. And of course, when we look historically over the past 100+ years, every approach to nation building, nationalism, Pan-Africanism, secular nationalism, and amorphous nationalism with no grounding has failed utterly. We're no closer to independence, sovereignty, and security in that sovereignty today than we were 100 years ago. So whatever has been going on has been absolutely failed, has absolutely failed. So when you recognize that reality, you move in a proper direction. If you see people in your family, every generation is suffering from the same diseases and so forth, high blood pressure and heart disease and diabetes and different diseases and so forth, then at some point you say it must be something that people are engaged in. It must be their behavior. You look at the dietary practices and you decide you're no longer going to consume all these fried foods and all this other nonsense that's been forced on us since enslavement, and you go back to a natural diet, a plant-based diet, and then a shift occurs immediately. The difference between you and other members in the family who are connected with you, who move towards that plant-based diet, all of you are healthy. Everyone else in the family is still suffering with obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and everything else. You simply recognized the foolish pattern of behavior and went back to what was original, what happened before we were fed this slave diet. And you reject the slave diet and go back to what's natural. When we see that something is not working intergenerationally, and we're continuously promoting a secular nationalism with no foundation, and it has utterly failed on every measure, then at some point you must recognize there's a behavioral pattern that's not proper. And you go back to what is our foundation, what is our reality, who are the only people who actually succeeded at what we're seeking to achieve, nation building, security in our sovereignty and so forth. Those who maintain ancestral religious practices were properly guided to wage war against the whites and their offspring and force the end of enslavement. They freed themselves, established independent sovereign nations right here in the Western Hemisphere, while other people were still enslaved. And then they forced the Gullah Wars and the Civil Wars to come into being and force the end of enslavement. We followed that pedigree as we talked about, that AMANNE Anato, that pedigree of revolutionary nationism. This is what we deal with on this broadcast. So, the title for tonight is SERIT, ne AMANNE, Fan-Africanism, the Devolution of Pan-Africanism, and the Solution of AMANNE Nationism. This is a subject that we published a short piece on, and we also recently published it on our AMANSEM blog on WordPress. We'll put that link in the chat room. We're going to go over this information and show how it's directly relevant to what we're dealing with on a regular basis. So that link is in the chat room, OG.SEM, which means Banners of Purification, OG.SEM.wordpress.com. SERIT, ne AMANNE, Fan-Africanism, the Devolution of Pan-Africanism, and the Solution of AMANNE, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black Nationism. So the image that you see is a fan from ancient Kamit. It is from the tomb of Tutankhamun, one of our ancestral Nesut, or King sovereigns. Misnomer King Tut. Tutankhamun, from his tomb, this particular fan that you see. And then we show in the language of ancient Kamit and Kamit the term SERIT, meaning fan. But then there's another version of the term SERIT, and this is what we get into. The term SERIT, also sorit, in the language of ancient Kamit. Soronua in Akan describes the fan used to fan the Nesut or the Henut, the king or queen. You see that on the left, SERIT, meaning fan. The term SERIT with a different determinative medut or determinative hieroglyph, the term spelled out SERIT, and then the determinative symbol at the end with a different determinative. One has SERIT, the spelling is SERIT, and then the symbol of a fan, it means fan. Then you have the word SERIT, but the symbol is not the symbol of a fan. It's a different determinative symbol. And that different determinative symbol has to do with sickness or nausea. This is why SERIT can mean fan, but with a different determinative. SERIT means sickness or nausea, and it shows the exudation of vomit from the mouth. This term, SERIT, fitting description of what we call Fan-Africanism, the devolution of Pan-Africanism. The Fan-Africanist, the pseudo-Pan-Africanist, or the Fan-Africanist seeks accolades, seeks praise, or fanning from a following, a fan or fanning base. The Fan-Africanist is not concerned with the liberation and restoration of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African black people first and foremost. The Fan-Africanist is concerned first and foremost with the faux-aggrandizement of himself at the expense of the receptivity of his fans, rooted in his own sense of inadequacy. So the receptivity of the fans of his fan base is truncated, and that truncated receptivity therefore serves the Fan-Africanist. This is the SERIT, the fanning, which manifests as SERIT, sickness for the individual and nausea for those who once followed the individual and for those who are SERIT, sick enough to continue to follow the individual. The Fan-Africanist manifests symptoms of AMANNE, which is the Akan term for behavioral mental illness, which is always rooted in spiritual discordance. And we deal with that in detail in our book, The Okra Complex, The Soul of Akan, when we talk about the nature of the soul, the deity dwelling in the head region. In Western parlance, within the field of behavioral health, psychology, such an individual would be diagnosed with histrionic personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, major depressive disorder, or bipolar disorder. These different expressions of spiritual discordance are called AMANNE in the Akan language, and every Afuraitkaitnit language has a term for that. Spiritual disalignment, a disalignment from the Sum, the spirit of the individual, from the Okra, the soul, the divine consciousness, the deity, the force dwelling in the head region, that has the blueprint regarding how the spirit of the individuals should be aligned, how they should operate harmoniously, what their divine function is. Just like your brain has the blueprint for every organ, gland, cell, system in your body, and how they should operate harmoniously and interdependently. In the same fashion, the divinity, the force that dwells in the head region, the Ka for males, Kat for females, Okra and Okra in the Akan language, Ori Inu in the Yoruba language, Selido and Vodun, Chi Inibo. Of course, this is for Afuraitkaitnit people only. That deity dwelling in the head region is the spirit's brain. It has the blueprint, meaning the divine function you are to execute in creation, the blueprint for how your spirit is to function, to operate, to align itself, how you are to express yourself. You feel that pull in the head region towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are harmonious, that are in harmony with divine order. When you go against that pull in the head region, you go in a different direction behaviorally, then you create disorder in your life. But when you realign with that divine force in the head region, and when you become more receptive to that force, that divinity, you can communicate with that deity. It's a male deity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female. You can communicate with him or her, and he or she will show you what you need to be engaged in harmoniously and what is out of harmony with your divine function. When you become aligned from that force in the head region consistently and there's a disconnect, then you manifest various expressions of AMANNE or behavioral illness, mental illness. The whites and the offspring have different terms and expressions for that, inclusive of narcissistic personality disorder, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and so forth. We talk about a Fan-Africanist starter kit, which you will readily recognize because you see these individuals who are really suffering and manifesting spiritual discordance, behavioral illness, mental illness. It has become a stigma, and it's been a stigma for a very long time in the Afuraitkaitnit community, for our people to seek out therapy, and that's for good reason. But there are many people within our community who have mental disorders. They will be diagnosed with mental illness. And many of them go undiagnosed, and they just operate within the community, and you see them, you work with them, you go to school with them, you see them in stores and so forth. You notice there's something wrong with the individual. Their behavior is disjointed. But, of course, there's a stigma with regard to going to therapy. And since our people are typically not engaged in ancestral religion and culture, therefore they don't have access on a regular basis to those individuals, males and females, who carry out that function as certain kinds of priests and priestesses who can take care of those quote-unquote mental illnesses or behavioral disorders. This is where the notion of psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists come from. We talked about in our broadcast therapists versus the rapist, ancestral religion versus psychology, and therapist spells out the rapist when you see it, but the term Charapit Kamit is a title of a certain kind of priest and priestess. This is where therapy, the term therapy comes from. We have priests and priestesses who engage the divinatory process, can assess the spirit of the individual, what is plaguing the individual, what discarnate spirits are plaguing them, what conditionings are plaguing them, what they can do to get back in alignment with divine order and overcome this spiritual discordance, spiritual disalignment, so-called mental illness and so forth. But when you don't have access to that and you're trained in Western psychology, you can't tell that the individual is being plagued by a discarnate ancestral spirit. You can't do anything about that, so you get them in therapy once a week for 45 minutes, put them on medication, and engaging in foolish exercises that are absolutely irrelevant to what's going on with the individual. But many of our people, of course, naturally have a repulsion, have no desire to embrace some form of therapy coming from Western culture, but then we also don't have access readily available with regard to ancestral religious practice because many of our people are not involved in that, at least on the surface. So people are going undiagnosed. And some of them go to school and get degrees and have businesses. Some of them are online. Some of them are teaching, talking about spirituality, calling themselves healers and priests and priestesses and educators and nation builders and revolutionaries and everything else. But they're mentally discordant, and it's manifest. And people don't want to bring that out. But people who've worked in the field of behavioral health on the conventional side, as well as individuals who've also dealt with mental health or spiritual discordance from the ritual ancestral religious side, can see who these individuals actually are. So the Fan-Africanist starter kit, as we call it, typically consists of, number one, for the Fan-Africanist who seeks accolades beyond the liberation of our people in the real sense. Number one, the Fan-Africanist memorizes information regarding African heritage, culture, spirituality, history, revolution, including a great deal of misinformation. Two, the Fan-Africanist then will preach and teach what prior authors, teachers, and speakers have shared regarding these subjects, often paraphrasing or directly plagiarizing. Most importantly, the Fan-Africanist parrots the misinformation of prior authors, teachers, and speakers on these subjects, demonstrating a lack of actual original research and experience. So they're preaching and teaching, sometimes charismatic, sometimes not, repeating the work of other people, plagiarizing the work of other people, but also putting forward a great deal of misinformation because they really never knew what they were talking about in the beginning. They don't have any original research, and they don't have any real experience. Number three, they generate a fan base via social media by appealing to the ignorance and emotionalism of the non-suspecting audience. They understand the dumbing down of America, which trickles down to the dumbing down of black people all over since the 90s, intensely into the so-called 2000s to today, through R&B and hip-hop and comedy and movies and television and schools and pseudo-religious organizations and so forth, churches, mosques, and everything else, pseudo-spirituality, pseudo-New Age spirituality, pseudo-metaphysics, pseudo-esoteric schools and so forth, that dumbing down process. They understand that dumbing down process, how it's affected our people. Many of our people have grown up over the past 20 years, dumbed down state. And because they don't have the capacity to analyze properly, sanction foolishness, then anything that comes out of the mouth of somebody who sounds charismatic or sounds like they know what they're talking about, that ignorance and emotionalism allows them to attach themselves to this individual. So the Fan-Africanist generates a fan base via social media by appealing to the ignorance and emotionalism of the non-suspecting audience. Number 4, in the Fan-Africanist starter kit, they charge a nominal fee for speeches, workshops, and consultations in different cities, misinforming the audience, sometimes using PowerPoints and so forth and video, consistently rooted in a lack of understanding of the subject and thus promoting a faulty analysis and unworkable solutions to black issues, including those who call themselves revolutionaries, intellectuals, and so forth. Faulty analysis consistently, unworkable solutions consistently, because they have no experience, they don't have any original research, they're just parroting some accurate information but a great deal of misinformation, and that births their faulty analysis and their unworkable solution. Number 5, they appeal to the ignorance, desperation, and misguided emotionalism of a certain class of black women and have sex with multiple women in various cities based upon quote-unquote fanning, while publicly referring to the black woman as quote-unquote queen, goddess, god, first teacher, oracle, all of this nonsense. Number 6, the Fan-Africanist then will chastise his fan base for not financially supporting his quote-unquote work, that pseudo work, when the funds begin to decline as his popularity wanes. Although the quote-unquote work consists of repeating the work of others with a flawed analysis. Number 7, they expose their own hypocrisy by having a meltdown on social media after facing increased scrutiny by their fan base. And you've seen this by numerous individuals over the past few years. Becoming very popular, not being supported, melting down on social media, berating their quote-unquote fan base, and then seeking out newbies after they lay low for a while or move to a different city or move to a different state and try to reinvent themselves. But they expose their own hypocrisy at the same time, and that leaves a negative taste in the mouth of some of their fans. So then, number 8, they move forward. The Fan-Africanist moves forward to offer a non-apology apology after the order of white politicians who seek to get in front of a scandal while blaming others for their actions. So the Fan-Africanist will get on YouTube, will get on Instagram and say, I just want to be the bigger man and so forth, and I want to apologize, and in case I made anyone feel a certain kind of way, it was not my intent, so I regret that I made somebody feel a certain way. If you were offended by something that I may have said, then I apologize if that actually happened. I regret making a certain mistake if I made the mistake. It's always a circular, pseudo, non-apology apology. And then they move into immediately blaming the people that they offended for offending them. It's really the people's fault because they really weren't supporting them. They should have had the support, so it's really your fault. Then number 9, repeat steps 1 through 8 in the Fan-Africanist starter kit. And we've seen this happen over and over again by these pseudo-scholars, pseudo-revolutionaries, pseudo-intellectuals, and so forth. That's what's going on. When cells become degraded, they mutate, degenerate, attack other cells, disintegrate, and become reconstituted in the proliferation of more degraded cells. This is the nature of the Fan-Africanist and Fan-Africanism. Serious Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit African black people do not entertain Fan-Africanists. We recognize the reality that Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit African black people, when healthy, are cells within a larger organ, community. We have our individual functions as cells, which are interdependent upon one another while also in service to the larger organ of which we are a component part, organelle. Knowing who we are as cells determines what our function is within the organ and the entire body. Rooted in spiritual consciousness, we recognize that there are certain abosom, orisha vodu, ntoru to divine spirit forces of creation who govern specific organs. The abosom, the deities who govern our specific organ, our specific community, affects the manner in which we align with one another as a group. So if you're serious, you don't entertain a Fan-Africanist. If you're serious, you understand that this subversive, undercover, messianic nationalism is idiotic. The fools who put themselves forward as the one man is going to lead the people to the promised land, like the fictional cartoon character Moses, or the fictional cartoon character Jesus, or the fictional cartoon character Muhammad, or the fictional cartoon character Buddha, and so forth. This is what they are operating upon. They're operating on that infrastructure, that platform, and they understand that. And they understand the ignorance of our people. So psychologically and subconsciously, our people are still embracing this quote-unquote messianic figure, this black messianic nationalist figure who's totally untethered and ungrounded, not rooted, unanchored, and so forth, spiritually discordant, spiritually disaligned, really behaviorally and mentally ill in the real sense, an undiagnosed mentally ill individual who's flipping out on people, flipping out online, but at the same time screaming and telling everybody they're the ones that they need to follow and so forth. Serious Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people don't entertain Fan-Africanists. Serious Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people understand that these individuals have no value whatsoever in the community. None. If they disappeared today, it wouldn't affect Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people at all. They have no value whatsoever. Some people will say, well, we need everybody in the community. We all need to come together. Absolutely not. We don't seek unity, and we don't strive for unity. That's that messianic, nationalist, pseudo-foolish, monotheistic platform. We seek to align with divine order. We align with the law, the divine expression of order. When you align with Ma'ah and Ma'at, the male and female forces of divine law and balance, when you align with the law, then unity is instantaneous. You don't seek unity. You seek adherence to the law. If you have a penny and a bowling ball and you hold them up at the same height above your head and you let them go at the same time, they're going to hit the floor at the same time, even though they are different sizes and there's a great disparity with regard to weight and structure. But if you let them go at the same time, from the same height, they're going to hit the ground at the same time. It's because the law equalizes them. The law unifies them. So when they adhere to the quote-unquote law and force of gravity, then they are instantaneously unified. The penny doesn't go around seeking unity or equality with the bowling ball or vice versa. They simply operate in harmony with order and adhere to law, to Ma'ah and Ma'at. And when we seek adherence to law, aligning every thought, intention, and action with divine order that is expressed through law, then everyone else who's adhering to law, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only, of course, will instantaneously be unified through the law. That's what we seek. Unity is the result. Unity is not the impetus for collective operations. People who are serious understand that. People who are not serious don't understand that. But serious Afurakani people do not entertain Fan-Africanists. They don't have any value. If they stopped doing what they were doing, nobody, 99.9999% of black people in America wouldn't even know that they stopped. 99.999% of black people in America wouldn't know that they existed. If they left the country and never came back, 99.9999% of black people wouldn't even know they were gone. That's a reality. So they really have no value whatsoever. So we don't need to unify with everyone. We don't need to unify with most people. We only need to adhere to law and connect with those who are actually serious, and anybody else we don't have to waste any time with, specifically individuals who are engaged in stupidity, Fan-Africanism. Those who are adhering to law, we naturally coalesce and engage in nation-building restoration work. And those who are uninformed or unaware, but at the same time sincere, when they are affected by the work we're doing, they will be drawn into that and awakened. When you place one tuning fork near another one, and you make one oscillate, the other one will begin to oscillate at the same frequency. When you're engaged in substantive work, then those who are sincere and receptive, even though they may be unaware, but if they're just sincere, normal people, then they'll start to oscillate as well. Their ancestresses and ancestors will prompt them and push them to pay attention. When you engage in the kind of work that generates great substance and you have great weight and gravity within the community, then you become like the Akan, the Akkanit, the sun, which has great weight and gravity, so the sun doesn't have to solicit planets to come down to the solar system. It doesn't have to pass out flyers to draw planets through the solar system. The weight and substance of the work, the power that the Akan, the Akkanit, the sun has, draws planets into its orbit, and they remain in the orbit because of the great power and weight of the Akan, of the Akkanit. When you're doing real work, you will draw sincere individuals into the orbit of that work. You don't have to run out and force them and convince them and bludgeon them and make them, quote unquote, follow you, make them believe that there's something wrong with them if they're not following what you're doing. Only the Fan-Africanist, who's operating on the black messianic nationalist idiotic platform, has to engage that kind of behavior. So, when we say rooted in spiritual consciousness, we recognize that there are certain abosom, orisha vodu, ntorotu, deities, spirit forces of creation who govern specific organs. The abosom who govern our specific organ community affects the manner in which we align with one another as a group. So those who are within that organal structure, and they're normal people, even if they're unaware, but they're just normal, regular black people who are not on some messianic nonsense, when they come in contact with something of great weight and great substance, they will be naturally drawn to it because it's in their nature, in their okra, soul, divine consciousness, the divinity dwelling in the head region. It's within our nature to be drawn to things that are in harmony with order and to repel things that are disorder. So those who are serious in doing the work, we are naturally unified by our own individual adherence to law. And when we individually adhere to law, to Ma'ah and Ma'at, the male and female divinity, governing divine law, and of course one of the reasons why this secular nationalism and amorphous nationalism and so forth has been faulty and ill-effective, even when people begin to talk about ancient Kamit and talk about ancestral culture and spirituality and so forth, they're still using a Eurocentric mindset. So they'll talk about Ma'at all day long, but that Eurocentric mindset precludes them to look for the balance, which is the male deity Ma'al, which has always been there. We invoke these deities and communicate directly with them. They'll talk about Amen, but they won't seek to align themselves with the other half of creation, Amenet. They'll talk about Ra, but they won't seek to align with the female divinity, Ra'et, the creatress. So they're imbalanced from the gate. So even when they're talking about African spirituality, they're still operating from a Eurocentric perspective. If they were not, they would have been talking about Amen and Amenet Ra and Ra'et, Ma'ar and Ma'at, all these different divinities and their balance from the beginning. When we released the Kukutuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction, 16 years ago, we were talking about Amen and Amenet, Ka and Kaet, Ra and Ra'et, Ma'ar and Ma'at from the beginning. When we released the Ubin Sheng, the ancestral summons, in 12,998, so-called 1997, we were talking about the male and female balance from the gate. So these individuals have, this information has been out, but that Eurocentric mindset cloaked in Afrocentric jargon, that Eurocentric mindset in blackface has precluded them from seeking that balance, and their nationalism manifests that imbalance. So it's ill-fated from the beginning, as has been proven over the decades, without any question. Now, when we lack a firm grounding in our place in creation, Fan-Africanism predictably manifests also on a communal level through the blind defense of indefensible ideas and the agenda of the whites and their offspring, couched in Afrocentric or nationalist jargon. This blind defense of the indefensible is rooted in deeply seated and deeply seated insecurities which the communal Fan-Africanist feels the necessity to cloak. This emotional and mental instability is again rooted in spiritual discordance. So it's on one hand you have the individual Fan-Africanist, and that can be a male or a female seeking that self-aggrandizement, accolades and so forth, fanning, and going through that entire Fan-Africanist starter kit and so forth. But then on a communal level, we lack a firm grounding in creation. Our place in creation is cells within an organal structure within, again, the greater divine body. Fan-Africanism predictably manifests itself on a communal level through the blind defense of indefensible ideas. So when the whites and their offspring put forward foolish ideas, the blind defend it. Indefensible ideas, white supremacy, the pseudo-foolish idea of white supremacy, that agenda, these individuals who are attached to that agenda, even though they're calling themselves Afrocentric or Pan-African and so forth, they begin to defend it. Of course, we've seen that with the Black Panther movies we've talked about, calling themselves Afrocentric or African nationalists, Pan-African nationalists, grounded and so forth. They're defending an white supremacist agenda because they have some sentimental attachment to it. So the whites and their offspring, imagine a white individual standing outside in a spot, and they have a product in their hand that's designed to destroy the minds of Afuraitkaitnit people. Then a black Afuraitkaitnit nationalist steps forward and says, this is no good, they're trying to destroy the minds of our people. That's this thing that they're holding in their hand. Then the pseudo-Afrocentric individual jumps in between and defends the white male against the normal Afurakani nationalist. He's standing in between the white male protecting. No, I like this thing that he has in his hand. Yes, he may be trying to destroy us, but there's some good in what he has, so I'm going to stand here and defend our enemy against another black person. I'm going to stand in between the enemy to protect the enemy and the product that he has in his hand. Whether that's politics, whether that's electoral politics, for example, with Obama, brainwashed Negroes running around, quote-unquote, voting for Obama, pseudo-cultural bearers, pseudo-nationalists and so forth, running around, raising money and getting people to run out and vote and so forth. As we released our broadcast on the night that he was, quote-unquote, selected, breaking the chains of the Afuraitkaitnit Adwinian mind, niggas, nationalists, and Obama. We told everyone what was going down, what was going to happen. And then 8 years later, the pseudo-culturalists developed buyer's remorse. They're so disappointed in Obama, and now they're criticizing. Why didn't you see that the night that they, quote-unquote, selected him or put him in position? Because you still were controlled by white culture. You You're still controlled by the whites and their offspring, still mentally enslaved by the whites and their offspring, but too embarrassed to admit it. So you put on this cloak of Afrocentrism or Pan-Africanism or nationalism and so forth, but you're still defending white supremacy, so-called white supremacy, in blackface. You didn't see that, so you want to defend the indefensible. And then even attack other people for exposing the fact that, listen, these crackers are not counting your votes. This is an individual put in place to destroy the minds of our people and further enslave our people socially and politically, economically, and so forth. That's exactly what Obama did. He did exactly what he was placed there to do and had no problem doing because he's a cracker anyway. And brainwashed Negroes didn't see that. Of course, the average black person wouldn't see that, but the pseudo-culturalists, the pseudo-nationalists, the pseudo-Pan-Africanists and so forth should have seen that. However, when we lack a firm grounding in our place in creation, Fan-Africanism predictably manifests on a communal level through the blind defense of indefensible ideas and the agenda of the whites and their offspring, couched in Afrocentric or nationalist jargon. So when we put forth the proper analysis, for example, of the Black Panther movie, when the whites and their offspring are using the film as a mass brainwashing session, teach integration, which is the subjugation of black people under the control of the whites and their offspring, to teach and force the insanity of bisexuality, homosexuality, as proven in their statements in the upcoming sequel and so forth, when they're going to showcase the lesbian, quote-unquote, relationship of the black lyricists and so forth. The same scene they left on the cutting floor of the lesbian scene in the first film, pretending like they left it on the cutting room floor so they can generate a response, so the LGBT so-called community can become outraged when they showed their faux outrage and so forth. And now the filmmakers are going to pretend like they were forced into a position to explore the lesbian relationship fully in the sequel, which they plan to do from the beginning, as a brother said, a setup from the get-up and so forth. And when the movie comes out, they're going to have a full-blown lesbian relationship, and all the young girls and all the young people who fell in love with the warriors and so forth, they're going to go to that film and be inundated with dissexuality, homosexuality, the agenda of the whites and their offspring, promoting integration, promoting dissexuality, homosexuality, demonizing Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, revolution, resolution, by placing those sentiments in the character of a fictional, idiotic individual, Killmonger. And you have ignorant Negroes talking about, well, Killmonger really didn't mean that, what he was really trying to do. Negro, he wasn't trying to do anything. He doesn't exist. Manufactured by crackers to demonize anything revolutionary, resolutionary from a pure Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit standpoint. Specifically so that when any black person in the country here's one of us speaking about Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, nation building, restoration, revolution, resolution, and so forth, the first thing they will think of is that fictional cartoon character, Killmonger, who they demonize revolution and resolution through. So you fools are sitting around here trying to analyze what his motives were, and he doesn't exist. That's like trying to analyze what Santa Claus's real motives were and why he built a fortress on the North Pole instead of the South Pole. Nigga, he don't exist. Killmonger doesn't exist. That's the creation of the whites and their offspring to demonize you. These fools are arguing about this, still arguing about that. Integration, dissexuality, homosexuality, demonizing Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, revolution, resolution, which is the one thing that has always overthrown white control and will overthrow white control, and of course the white savior complex, that same white messianic complex. Negroes talking about we need to ally with the CIA, the same CIA that killed Patrice Lumumba in Afuraitkai. These Negroes are embracing the CIA operative, or white CIA operative. What is the message here? So people who are aware and conscious and receptive recognize that any vehicle created by the whites and their offspring whether they use a black caste or not, is designed to destroy the minds of our people. We recognize our enemy, the whites and their offspring, whether the white Europeans, white Americans, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white Asians, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Hindus, white Arabs, all non-Afurakani, non-Afuraitkaitnit people, the whites and their offspring, and they incarnate the spirits of disorder without exception. That means everyone exists, that exists now, everyone that has ever existed in the past, every one of them that will exist in the future until we make them extinct. All of them incarnate the spirits of disorder. All of them are divinely hated, rejected. They are cancerous cells within the body of black humanity with no value. They are spirits of disorder before they even enter into the womb. When they are born into the body of some perverse, ugly little white infant, they are spirits of disorder operating through that melanin recessive, perverse white body. They were spirits of disorder before they even entered into the womb. When you're receptive, you can attune to that spiritual perversity, that spiritual discordance, and you recognize that they are spiritually disfigured because they don't have a ka, a deity dwelling in the head region. They don't have a ba or ba'at, that divine living force, a child of Ra and Ra dwelling within the spirit bodies of black people. They don't have a ba or ba'at, the divine living spirit. They don't have a ka or kayat, the divine soul. They don't have that. That's the difference between us and them. And they will never have that. So they are spiritually disfigured from the gate without exception. If you're receptive, even just on a basic level, you can pick up on that discordant energy emanating from these beasts. If you're not, you're going to seek to accept them. The whites and their offspring, anything they put forward is always designed for our subjugation and their control over us. If you don't understand that, you begin to defend the indefensible, yet it is cloaked in Afrocentric or nationalist jargon. And as we said, this blind defense is rooted in deeply seated and deeply seated insecurities, which the communal Fan-Africanist feels the necessity to cloak. They have some sentimental attachment to something that the whites and their offspring are putting forward, but they don't want to show that fully, so they have to pretend like their foolish defense of anything they put forward, whether it's electoral politics or some kind of educational endeavor or some movie or some pseudo-religious institution or whatever it is. They have to pretend like they're embracing it from a conscious, grounded perspective, and they have to defend that foolishness. So when someone exposes them for their ignorance, then they have to defend it. They have to argue it. They have to cloak the fact that they have these insecurities, so they cloak it in pseudo-Afrocentric or nationalist or Pan-Africanist jargon. But this is emotional and mental instability, and it's rooted, as all emotional instability, mental instability is rooted in spiritual discordance. So we must recognize that. We must be grounded in Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion to function harmoniously as individuals and interrelated cells in the larger body. This includes our approaches to the nourishment, meaning development, and immunity, meaning the defense military of our organ, our nation, our AMANNE. Our practice of ancestral religion is born of our spirit-genetic blood circles. Serious Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit Africans, black people, thus embrace AMANNE, nationism, the purification of nationalism. In the true sense, nationism, rooted in that AMANNE or nation, and AMANNE is a living, breathing entity governed by specific forces in nature. And we attune to those forces in nature, so as a collective, we operate harmoniously with one another. In the true sense, nationism is inclusive of a true Pan-Africanism, meaning all related cells, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit only, of course, all related cells working together for the sustenance of the whole. It includes that true sense of Pan-Africanism while providing the missing link not found within secular Pan-Africanism or nationalism. That missing link is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, and its cosmological infrastructure. Our societies or our civilization is defined as a society patterned after the divine order of creation. You have a society that's rooted and patterned after the divine order of creation, just like your physical body is regulated by smaller bodies, which are the organs, which give birth to cells, which are smaller bodies, and those organs, systems, cells all work together in a harmonious fashion that is patterned after the order of creation. The great divine body, the supreme being, the organs are the planets, suns, moons, stars, and so forth. Then the cells of those organs, including us, plant life, animal life, mineral life, the way we operate harmoniously, patterned after the great divine body. And when we establish structure, civilization, a collective group of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people who have different energy complexes, meaning we're children of different organs or deities, and we operate harmoniously with one another because we are tuned to the energy complex. Therefore, we know what our talents are, we know what our gifts are, we know what our capacities are, and we know what we have to contribute to the whole. When every organ within the body knows what its function is, it can contribute that function to the whole body. If the heart doesn't know who it is, or the liver doesn't know who it is, or the pancreas doesn't know who it is, then they can't contribute. They can't fully function optimally, and they can't contribute their energy to the body. They think, well, I'm just a body cell. I'm not going to lock myself into any kind of definition. If a pancreas is talking stupid like that, because they've been listening to the whites in their offspring, they'll say, I'm not a pancreas, I'm just a body cell or a body cell. Then they won't function as a pancreas. If the liver or the spleen or the heart or the lungs are trying not to be who they were designed to be, then they cannot contribute to the whole. They can call themselves body tissues, but the body will fall apart because they're not aligned with their identity and therefore the function related to their identity and rooted in our identity. We are cells, organelles within larger organal structures. If we don't know who we are, we don't know what divinity governs our kayat, our head, the spiritual head, the soul. We don't know what our capacities are, energy capacities are, our conscious capacities are, then we don't have anything to contribute. So we just start making up things, imitating what other people say, coming up with foolish theories, defending idiotic ideas of the whites in their offspring, cloaked in blackface and so forth, and contribute stupidity to the nation, to the collective of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, and everything falls apart. We're not operating based on an infrastructure. But ancestral religion is the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance. We align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. Governed by the forces in nature that govern creation, those same forces that govern us, we align with those forces in creation. We align ourselves with the embodiments of divine order in creation. Therefore, we know what our functions are, what our capacities are, and we can contribute that. We know how to expand and contract that energy that we're born with, contributing to the stability of the whole and the sustenance of the whole and the vitality of the whole. That's the missing link. Ancestral religion in the true sense. When people don't understand ancestral religion, they think that means just going to Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, and so forth, getting some initiations, coming back and setting up shop and making some money or imitating what other people are doing. They have no understanding about what ancestral religion really is. We're talking about Nationism, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion in its various expressions, aligning every thought, intention, and action with the divinity that governs us. The forces in nature and the ancestral spirits give us the power and the guidance on how to execute our divine function in harmony with who we are, based on clan affiliation, based on what kind of cell within what kind of organ within the great divine body that we are. That's the infrastructure, the cosmological infrastructure, which has been the missing link with these secular forms of nation building or pseudo-nation building, nationalism. This is why we deal with nationism. Without that infrastructure, Fan-Africanism in its various forms flourishes, and we have seen that. With the infrastructure in place, Fan-Africanism is exposed and rooted out. The SERIT, sickness, gives way then to the SERIT, the fanning or empowering of the sovereignty of the AMANNE, the nation, just like the fanning of the Nesut and the Henut, the king and queen mother, for vitality and empowerment. SERIT, meaning sickness, gives way to SERIT, meaning fanning or giving vitality and power to the sovereignty of the nation. So this is the difference between SERIT, meaning a fan, and SERIT, meaning sickness or nausea. We don't deal with Fan-Africanists on an individual level. We don't deal with Fan-Africanism on a communal level. When you embrace ancestral religion, you're embracing the forces in nature that are the embodiments of divine order and creation, and you get in alignment with the forces in creation. You get in alignment with that flow of order, then you order your individual self, you order your life, you order your family structure, and then you connect with others who are engaged in that same kind of ordering structure. And once you have that ordering flow between groups of people, that generation, that flowing of energy generates a field, a magnetic field. It gathers great weight, gravity, substance, and then we draw other normal people into our orbit of activity. We're like the tuning fork that is stimulated, oscillating based on a harmonious frequency, and it begins to stimulate others outside of our immediate group, and they begin to awaken themselves, and they become receptive, and their ancestresses and ancestors' messages are able to get in and be received and held and contemplated and acted upon, and their behavior changes, and then they're drawn towards other people who are engaged in the same process, become part of that energetic flow that's becoming greater and greater within the community. So this is what we're talking about with regard to Ojira Mind, the purified Ojira Oman, nation, mind, land of the west, the setting sun. The purified nation, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. We must purify ourselves first. We can't operate on the same foolish ideas, not only from pseudo-religions, but also from failed approaches to nationalism and Pan-Africanism. So we're moving in a proper direction, a different direction, a new direction, but an old direction, back to our origins, that Sankofa process, going back to what actually works, rooted in our ancestral religious values. Ojira Mind, the purified nation, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. And this is why coming up in June, we have our third annual Ojira Mind Afashe Ojira Mind Conference, the Purified Nation, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere Conference, and our focus is AMANNE Nationism, the purification of nationalism. We have presenters throughout the day dealing with the 7 principal values of AMANSEM, nation building, restoration. Methods of food production and preservation is the first principal value of nation building, restoration, establishing those methods of food production and preservation. Of course, that includes agriculture and so forth, establishing systems of curing disease, establishing a military structure, establishing training institutions, cultural institutions, religious institutions, that includes educational institutions and so forth, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence, the building of homes on acquired land, the manufacturing of textiles. These are the 7 principal values of AMANSEM, nation building, restoration. These 7 different principal values of nation building, restoration will be addressed at our conference by our different presenters. We just included and confirmed that Dr. Iya Ajua will be presenting on her new book, Acclaim, which is a curriculum that actually trains those educators and African-centered institutions, as well as those institutions that will become African-centered, or Afuraitkaitnit, or people establishing educational curriculums and so forth to transform their educational curriculums into Afuraitkaitnit grounded curriculums and so forth for the education of our children, not only in school settings, but also in home school settings, wherever we exist at whatever time of day, night, year, and so forth. We're constantly educating our people so we can get the skills that we need on every level for nation building. when you look on the website, Ojira Amane Afashe, you will see all of the details. June 24th here in Washington, D.C., which is a Awusida, which is a Sunday. This event will be going on. We'll have our different presentations. We will also have our Egua Marketplace vendors throughout the course of the day. When you go to the website, you'll see the detailed information. We have a couple more presenters we will be confirming very soon, so keep checking on the page. Of course, the event is free and open to Afurakani and Afuraitkaitnit people only. So when you come to the event, it's also a family-friendly event, so you can bring children as well. So you come to the event, we will have our vendors there all day long, including a vegan food vendor. We'll have our presentations throughout the course of the day. It's a free event. You will also receive a free copy of our book, Ojira Amane Afashe, Volume 3, which we will release on that day. That will be a new book that will be released on that day, and we'll be giving it away to everyone who comes to the conference. Every time we have a conference, we give away a free copy of the new book to everyone who attends the conference. All of our conferences are free and so forth. So all of that information you will find on the Ojira Amane Afashe page. You'll also find the link to our 7-part series on Ojira Amane, the Purified Nation, dealing with our identity as Ojira, dealing with cultural continuity and nation building, dealing with ancestral religion as it relates to nation building and Ojira Amane, dealing with EBO, economic development. In fact, we're going to go through on the page. We'll put a link on the page right now for the Ojira Amane page so you can see the different pieces. You go in the chat room, just ojirafo.com/Ojira Amane. That is the link to that particular page. You also, on that page, there's also a link to our Ojira Amane Afashe page. For those who would like to vend at our event, also, you can go to our Ojira Amane Afashe page and you can download the vending form. We have about 4 spaces left. You can download the information there. When you go to the Ojira Amane page, I want to give you the titles of this 7-part series very quickly. So we have a 7-part series we did on Ojira Amane, the Purified Nation, first dealing with our identity. The second piece is dealing with cultural continuity and nation building. Third piece is dealing with Nationism, Ancestral Religion in the context of nation building. The part 4, dealing with EPO, Ancestral Economics, our approach to economic development. And the Ojira Amane, the Purified Nation. Part 5 is dealing with AMANNE, the nature of government, our ancestral institutions, governmental structures in Ojira Amane. Part 6, Kuro, the Black Independent Town Movement, establishing independent towns. That is part of our process, not only accessing land on the continent of Afuraitkaitnit, but individuals here. We have a tradition before and after the Civil War when our people escaped and freed themselves from enslavement, establishing independent black towns. After we forced the Civil War and forced the end of enslavement, there were some of our people who separated from the larger groups and established independent black towns. That has been a movement for over 200 years, and some of our people are still on that, and some people are reviving that notion, moving together, establishing a collective, buying 100 acres of land or more and so forth, incorporating the town, having our own government and so forth, just like other individuals establish townships, small cities, villages, and so forth. It is a process. People are doing that. There are still independent black towns now that are over 100 years old and so forth in different places around the country that you can visit and see how they operate, how they establish their governmental structure. They have their own mayors, city councils, own police, and so forth. They structure themselves in different ways. You can learn from that, but then we also have our own process. And then, of course, we talk about AMANNE, nationism, cultural traditions, and so forth as the glue that perpetuates this nation. So that 7-part series you want to look at, we did on Blog Talk, is on YouTube. You can go through that 7-part series dealing with the various aspects of Ojira Amane, the Purified Nation. And, of course, our Ojira Amane conference is where people come from around the country. Last year, we had people from Florida and Kansas and Alabama and Jersey and Philly and Connecticut. of course, D.C. and Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, different places coming together to the conference. People of Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani people in the Western Hemisphere coming together to not only connect with one another, study, become informed, network, interface, exchange information, ideas, energy, and so forth. So this is our third annual conference. We are growing. We now have 30 books out. All 30 books you can download for free from our website. We also have the softcover versions which you can purchase that range between $8 and $11. This Ojiraman Afashe book, Volume 3, will be book number 31. We have more books coming out this year, about 8 more books total this year, and of course our year ends in September 23rd. So, but this is a time for all of us to come together, so you can go to that page, check out that information, and get in tune with what we're doing. So we're near the end of the broadcast. This is our short broadcast on Yauda Thursday nights for AMANSEM, Affairs of the Nation. This is a 1-hour broadcast, which is different from our 2-hour broadcast, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, or Joda, Benada, and Awukuda. But one final announcement. We still have a few spaces left for our upcoming event in May on Memorial Day weekend, our retreat in Treme, New Orleans. Myself and Voodoo Queen Kalinda Laveau was on our show on Joda on Monday, talking about our Ka'et, Soul of Hoodoo and Voodoo Training, Cultural and Ritual Retreat, 2-day retreat that we're having on the Memorial Day weekend. We're focusing on Oberima, Afurakani manhood, Obaatan, Afurakani womanhood. Those trainings, those workshops, we will be conducting those individually, myself with the brothers, Kalinda Laveau with the sisters. We'll also have joint sessions, Patasa Satem, and other joint sessions as well as ancestral ritual, vegan food, and so forth. So throughout the event, throughout the weekend. So we have a few spaces left for that. Reserve your space today. The retreat is weeks away in New Orleans, so reserve your space today on our Ka'et page. You can also listen to the interview we did with Kalinda just a couple of days ago. That is up on our YouTube page. Ojirafo on YouTube is also, we posted it on Facebook, so you can get detailed information there. Of course, please share that information as well as the trailer. Share the trailer. People really appreciate the information we put in the trailer. So go to the Ka'et page to reserve your space. And also check out our Amarukako Adebisa Ajumadi African American Ancestral Divination Project documentary film page. We're going to be filming Kalinda's segment when we're in New Orleans. We're going to be filming and trying to get all the filming done by the end of May, early June, so we can have a release by at some point early summer. That is the goal and so forth. So if you support the work we're doing, would like to see that film, we're at 60% of our crowdfunding goal. We still need that assistance, so please go to the page for that. So we want to say thank you for tuning into this broadcast. Check out our information. If you have any questions or comments, send us an email on Facebook or our regular email address associated with the website. And again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. And Yabesha Abio, we will meet again. What's up?